Tell me why my wolf left a crown on your porch." Alpha King Everett Blackthorne said it like an accusation, which was impressive, considering Clara Whitaker had been the one who woke up to find a 300-pound black wolf sitting on her welcome mat like he owned the mortgage. The wolf had arranged pine cones into a perfect little crown beside her boots. Not a messy pile. A crown. 5 points, tucked with wild mint, a raven feather, and one smooth creek stone shaped so much like a heart that Clara stared at it for a full 10 seconds before saying, "Absolutely not." The wolf blinked once. Then he pushed the heartstone closer with one massive paw. Clara lived alone at the edge of Silver Pine, where the forest pressed close to the road, and everybody knew everybody's business by breakfast. She was a permit clerk, part-time herbal forager, and full-time low-ranking Omega, which meant people trusted her to stamp paperwork, mend poultices, and stay politely invisible. They did not expect royal wolves to bring her handmade woodland jewelry. "I don't accept gifts from men who don't sign their name," she told him. His ears flicked. He looked offended, which was difficult to take seriously from an animal with pine needles stuck to his chin. By noon, the whole pack knew. By 2, Clara was standing in the Silver Pine Pack Hall in muddy boots while elders whispered like she had personally seduced the weather. Everett Blackthorne stood at the head of the room, tall, sharp-suited, cold-eyed, carrying the kind of authority that made grown alphas check their posture. "Miss Whitaker," he said, "I did not send gifts to your house." Clara folded her arms. "Good. Then your wolf is freelancing." A guard coughed into his fist. Everett's jaw moved once. "Obsidian does not freelance. He does arts and crafts, apparently." That time, even the beta looked down. Clara set the pinecone crown on the council table. The room went quiet. The moment Everett saw it, something shifted in his face. Not much, just enough. His scent cut through the polished wood and old coffee in the hall. Cedar, rain, and a flicker of panic he buried almost instantly. Clara felt it hit somewhere under her ribs, warm and strange, like a door opening in a house she had never entered. Mate Bond. No. She took one careful breath. Everett did too. Neither of them said a word. Outside the tall glass doors, the giant black wolf appeared again, carrying lavender in his mouth like a guilty boyfriend who had skipped the apology and gone straight to flowers. Clara looked at the king. Still know nothing? Everett stared at the wolf. The wolf stared back. Then Obsidian dropped the lavender at Clara's feet and growled softly at Elder Marlowe. Obsidian's growl did not shake the glass, but every wolf in the pack hall felt it in their bones. Elder Marlowe went very still, one hand resting on the silver head of his cane, his smile pressed thin enough to cut paper. "Your Majesty," he said, "your animal appears confused." Clara looked down at the lavender lying by her boots. "That makes 2 of us." No one laughed this time. Everett stepped off the dais with the kind of control that made the room hold its breath. He did not rush. Kings did not rush, apparently, even when their private wolf was delivering flowers to a low-ranking Omega in front of half the council. He stopped 6 feet from Clara, close enough that she could see the faint tension beside his mouth. "Obsidian," he said, low and firm. Outside, the wolf did not move. He sat down in front of the glass doors and looked at Everett like he had just heard a very weak suggestion. Clara raised an eyebrow. "That usually work?" Everett did not look at her. "Usually. Rough day for usually." His eyes flicked to hers, and for half a second the cold royal mask slipped. Not enough to be warm, just enough to be human. Then Elder Marlowe cleared his throat. "This is exactly the concern, Your Majesty. The royal wolf is displaying attachment behavior toward an unvetted Omega with no standing, no blood alliance, and no council approval." Clara felt the room tilt toward her. Low rank was not supposed to sting after 26 years of hearing it, but some words still found soft places. "I have a name," she said. Marlowe smiled without looking at her. "Of course." Everett's voice cut in. "Use it." The elder's smile froze. Clara looked at Everett before she could stop herself. He was still facing Marlowe, shoulders squared, expression carved from winter, but the command had landed like a hand placed quietly between her and the insult. It should not have mattered. It did. Marlowe bowed his head a fraction. Miss Whitaker may have unknowingly triggered a Bond response. The room stirred. Clara's pulse kicked once. Bond. There it was again. The word everybody wanted to circle, but nobody wanted to touch. Everett turned to the table. He picked up the pinecone crown, and his thumb brushed the wild mint tucked between the cones. The cedar rain scent sharpened again. Clara caught it before he locked it down. Recognition, not surprise. You know these plants, she said softly. Everett's hand stopped. Silver pine has common forest growth. That mint only grows near the North Creek. The raven feather is from the ridge above Black Hollow. And that creek stone, she nodded toward the table, that came from the bend behind the old ranger station. Not exactly random shopping. Everett set the crown down carefully. Too carefully. My wolf knows the territory. Your wolf knows my porch. Beta Grant Maddox made a sound that might have been a cough, and might have been a man choosing life by not laughing. Before Everett could answer, Obsidian rose. He padded into the hall like rules were for smaller creatures, walked past two guards who wisely discovered urgent interest in the ceiling, and dropped something else beside Clara's boot. A strip of black wool. Fine, expensive, and edged with silver thread. The room went silent. Clara crouched and picked it up. She had filed enough royal supply permits to know what she was holding. This is from your cloak. Everett's face went completely still. Marlowe's eyes sharpened. Clara stood slowly. Still want to tell me he is confused? Obsidian leaned his massive shoulder against her side, warm and immovable. Everett looked at the wolf, then at Clara, and for the first time since she had met him, the Alpha King looked less like a ruler giving orders and more like a man realizing his secrets had pause. By sunset, Silver Pine had turned Clara Whitaker into a roomer with boots. At the grocery on Maple Street, two women stopped talking when she walked past the apples. At the gas station, a border guard pretended not to stare and then stared with his whole face. By the time Clara reached the permit office, someone had taped a sticky note to her desk that said, Royal Pet Girlfriend. She peeled it off, read it twice, and dropped it into the trash. Creative, she muttered. Still rude. Her supervisor, Dale, stood near the copier holding a folder like it could protect him from pack politics. Clara, the council asked that you take a few days off. The council does not run forestry permits. No, but they do run almost everything else, and I enjoy having health insurance. Clara looked through the front window. Across the street, two black SUVs idled by the curb. Royal security, subtle as a marching band in a library. Everett Blackthorne had sent guards to watch her after denying, in public and with impressive cheekbones, that anything unusual was happening. That annoyed her more than the sticky note. Protection was one thing. Being quietly boxed in was another. At 5:30, Clara left by the back door with her canvas bag, crossed behind the hardware store, and took the deer trail toward the north woods. If the king wanted her to stay out of the forest, he should not have let his wolf deliver half of it to her porch. The air smelled like pine sap, wet soil, and the cold metallic edge of early spring. 10 minutes in, she heard a branch crack behind her. If you are here to arrest me, she said, not turning around, at least make it interesting. Obsidian stepped between the trees, silent for something the size of a motorcycle. His black coat caught the last light in blue edges. In his mouth was a sprig of winterroot, the exact herb she had come to find. Clara stared at him. You know, most men start with coffee. The wolf dropped the winterroot at her feet and huffed. Then he moved in front of her, blocking the narrow trail. No, she pointed past him. I need to check the creek bed. Obsidian lowered his head. Not aggressive. Firm. Like a very furry crossing guard. Clara's irritation faded. The mate bond flickered under her ribs again, warmer this time, threaded with warning. She crouched and brushed leaves from the path ahead. Beneath them, half hidden in mud, was a silver snare. Not rusty, not old, freshly set. Her stomach went cold. Silver traps were illegal inside pack territory unless authorized by the royal guard. Clara did not touch it. She took one breath, then another, and let her scent truth open. Fear clung to the metal. Fear, ambition, and a sharp trace of cedar rain that made her chest tighten. Everett. No, not him exactly. His cloak thread. His scent used like a signature. Behind her, Obsidian growled low, not at the trap, but toward the ridge. Someone had wanted Clara to find this. Someone had wanted the evidence to point straight at the Alpha King. Clara did not move for a full 10 seconds. In Silverpine, that counted as emotional restraint and possibly personal growth. The silver snare lay under the leaves, neat and deliberate, with Everett Blackthorne's stolen scent pressed into it like a forged signature. Obsidian stood beside her, every inch of him still except for the slow lift of his lip. "Do not touch it," a voice said behind her. Clara turned. Everett stepped out of the trees in a black coat. No crown, no guards, and no expression soft enough to be useful. He looked at the trap, then at her, and the air changed. "I told you to stay out of the North Woods." "Nice to see you too." His eyes flashed. "This is not funny." "No, but you arriving alone in the exact place where someone planted a trap with your scent on it is doing a lot of work for the wrong side." His jaw tightened. Behind him, Beta Grant Maddox appeared with 2 guards, both careful to look anywhere except at the illegal silver on the ground. Everett crouched near the snare, but did not touch it. "Grant." The Beta pulled a cloth evidence pouch from his coat. "Already logging it." Clara looked between them. "So this is official now?" "It became official when someone set silver inside my territory," Everett said. "It became personal when they aimed it at you." The words landed too close. Clara looked away first, irritated that her chest had heard him before her brain approved. Obsidian nudged her elbow. Not gently, more like a large, furry attorney reminding his client to speak. "There is cedar rain on the metal," Clara said. "Your scent, but wrong. Thin, like it came from cloth, not skin." Grant's brows lifted. "You can tell that. I work permits and herbs, not miracles." Obsidian huffed. Clara sighed. "Fine. Sometimes scent leaves truth behind. Objects hold it, if the emotion is strong enough." Everett stared at her then. Not like she was low-ranked, not like she was a problem, but like she had just handed him a key to a locked room he had been bleeding against for years. Then his gaze dropped to her wrist. A small red mark curved near her sleeve where she had brushed a silver-tainted leaf. His face went cold in a way that had nothing to do with anger at her. "You are hurt." "Barely." "Silver is never barely." He reached for her hand, stopped halfway, and waited. That almost undid her. Powerful men in pack halls like to grab, order, decide. Everett Blackthorne, who could command every wolf in 3 counties, stood in the woods and waited for permission. Clara gave him her wrist. His fingers were warm, careful, and steady, but the second his skin touched hers, the mate bond flared like a porch light in the dark. Obsidian went completely smug. Grant turned around with heroic speed. Everett inhaled once, sharp and quiet. Clara felt his fear then, buried beneath duty and discipline. Not fear of her. Fear for her. "You feel it too," she whispered. Everett wrapped a clean cloth around her wrist. "Feeling something does not make it safe." "No," Clara said, looking at the trap. "But pretending not to feel it almost got me framed." Obsidian picked up the winter root and dropped it into her bag, as if concluding the meeting. Then, from the ridge above them, a branch snapped. All 4 guards turned. Everett stepped in front of Clara before he seemed to realize he had done it. In the fading light, someone ran. They did not catch the runner. Silver Pine Woods were old, dark, and full of places a coward could vanish if he knew the deer trails. By morning, Elder Marlowe had turned that failure into a speech. A low-ranked Omega enters restricted forest land, an illegal silver trap appears, and now the royal wolf refuses to leave her side. He said, pacing before the council table like a man auditioning for a tragedy no one had requested. "This is not romance. This is instability." Clara stood near the back of the pack hall with a clean bandage around her wrist, and Obsidian pressed against her leg like a 300-pound shadow with opinions. The wolf had already growled at 3 elders, 1 security camera, and a decorative fern that had done nothing except exist near Marlowe. Everett sat on the raised dais, still as carved stone. He had not slept. Clara could see it in the faint bruised color under his eyes, and the way his hand rested too close to the arm of the chair, like he was holding himself there by force. "Miss Whitaker should be removed from Silver Pine until after the Luna ceremony," Marlowe continued. "For her safety, of course." Clara almost laughed. People always added, "for your safety," when they meant, "for our convenience." Grant Maddox shifted beside Everett. "There is no evidence Clara set the trap." "I did not say she set it," Marlowe replied smoothly. "I said her presence is causing disorder." Clara lifted her hand. "I am standing right here, in case anyone wants to insult me directly. It saves time." A few younger wolves looked down fast. Everett's mouth twitched once, so small she might have imagined it. Then Lady Vivian Hale stepped forward from the noble benches, pale coat perfect, blonde hair smooth, expression sweet enough to make Clara check for poison. No one blames you, Miss Whitaker. Some Omegas are simply not prepared for royal attention. Obsidian made a sound deep in his chest. Clara placed 2 fingers on his head. Do not eat the blonde one. It will only prove her point. The room went silent in that beautiful, terrible way a room does when everybody wants to laugh and no one wants to die politically. Everett rose. Enough. One word, and every whisper folded shut. He looked at Marlowe. Clara Whitaker is under royal protection until the trap investigation is complete. For one breath, Clara felt warmth bloom in her chest. Then Marlowe said, Protection is not the same as trust, Your Majesty. Everett did not answer quickly enough. That small silence did more damage than an accusation. Clara felt it land, sharp and clean. He would protect her body. He would not yet risk the throne on her truth. Obsidian suddenly moved. He walked to the center of the hall, lowered his head, and dropped something onto the polished floor. Gold flashed under the lights. Grant swore under his breath. Marlowe went pale. Everett stepped down from the dais. Clara knew the object before anyone named it. Every child in Silverpine had seen it in history books. The Blackthorn royal signet, lost the night Everett's father died. Obsidian nudged it toward Clara, not Everett. The message was clear enough to stop the whole pack from breathing. The wolf trusted her with the crown's oldest secret. The royal signet sat on the council floor, small enough to fit in Clara's palm and heavy enough to drag every secret in the room into the light. No one moved. Not the elders. Not the guards. Not Lady Vivian, whose perfect face had gone carefully blank. Even Marlowe looked as if someone had opened a door behind him and found a grave he had personally locked. Clara stared at the gold ring. Why does your wolf have the lost signet? Everett did not answer. His eyes were fixed on Obsidian, and for once the Alpha King looked less like a man in command and more like a man being judged by the only part of himself that had never learned to lie. Grant Maddox stepped closer. Your Majesty. Everett lifted one hand, stopping him. Then he looked at Clara. Can you read it? The question hit the room harder than a shout. Marlowe's cane clicked against the floor. Absolutely not. That signet is royal evidence. Clara looked at him. Evidence of what? His mouth shut. Everett bent, picked up the ring with a clean handkerchief, and held it out to Clara. Of what happened the night my father died. The hall seemed to shrink around them. Clara took the signet carefully. The metal was cold, but the memory inside it was not. It rushed up through her fingers in broken pieces. Rain on black stone, cedar smoke, fear swallowed behind royal discipline. A man's voice sang, hide it before the boy finds out. And underneath that, a wolf's grief so deep Clara nearly dropped the ring. Obsidian pressed against her side, steadying her. She closed her eyes. Your father was not alone. Everett's face did not change, but his scent did. The cedar sharpened, cut with something raw. Keep going. Clara swallowed. There were council scents. More than one. Someone took the signet off his hand after he died. Not to steal it. To erase who was with him. Marlowe stepped forward. This is nonsense. A lowborn Omega touching royal metal and inventing ghost stories is not proof. Obsidian turned his head toward him very slowly. Clara opened her eyes. I did not say your scent was on it. Marlowe froze. Everett saw it. So did Grant. So did every wolf in the room with a working nose and a survival instinct. Everett's voice went quiet. Council is adjourned. No one argued. 10 minutes later, Clara stood in Everett's private office with Grant at the door and Obsidian lying across the exit like a black-furred security system. Everett faced the window, the signet on his desk between them. My father's death was ruled a border accident, he said. I was 23, away in Montana settling a pact dispute. By the time I came home, the council had burned half the records and called it tradition. Clara's anger softened, but only a little. And you let them? He turned. I inherited a throne full of men who smiled at me while deciding whether I would survive the year. There it was. Not an excuse. A wound with a crown on top. Clara touched the bandage at her wrist. So you learned to say nothing. I learned silence kept people alive. It also keeps liars comfortable. Everett looked at her for a long moment. Then, quietly, he said, yes. That single word did more than any polished apology could have. Before Clara could answer, the office doors opened without a knock. 2 royal guards entered, faces tight with duty. Marlowe stood behind them. Clara Whitaker, he said, holding up a signed order. By authority of Emergency Council law, you are being detained for theft of the Blackthorn royal signet. Obsidian rose with a growl. Everett's eyes went silver cold. Clara looked at the order, then at the king who had hidden too much for too long. Do not protect me in private, she said. Tell the truth in public. The guards did not touch Clara. That was either wisdom, fear of Obsidian, or the first useful training Silverpine security had received all year. They stood with the signed order between them and looked at Everett like men hoping the floor would kindly open before anyone asked them to choose sides. Marlowe's voice stayed smooth. Your Majesty, Emergency Council law is clear. The accused must be separated from royal influence until questioning. Clara gave a short laugh. Royal influence? He barely admitted I was in the room until yesterday. Everett's eyes cut to her, and the mate bond pulled tight between them, warm with pain and something dangerously close to regret. He took one step toward her. Clara, I can stop this quietly. That hurt worse than the order. She looked at him, really looked at him. The tired king, the disciplined alpha, the man who had spent years swallowing truth because the throne demanded silence and called it strength. That is the problem, she said. You keep wanting to save me quietly. Grant shifted by the door. Even he looked like the words had found a bruise. Everett lowered his voice. If I challenge the council without complete evidence, the Southern Pax will call it emotional weakness. Marlowe will use the bond against you. He is already using it. Clara stepped away before his hand could reach her. You want me hidden because it is safer. The council wants me hidden because I am inconvenient. From where I am standing, the hallway looks exactly the same. Obsidian moved then, not toward Marlowe, not toward the guards. He walked to Clara's side and pressed his shoulder against her hip, choosing her in front of every witness in the office. Everett went still. A king could command armies. He could not command that. Marlowe's face tightened. The wolf is compromised. Obsidian sneezed directly onto his polished shoe. Clara should not have smiled. She did anyway. He seems pretty clear to me. Everett looked at his wolf, and something in him cracked quietly, without drama, without shouting. For one breath Clara felt all of it through the bond. Fear for her, grief for his father, fury at the council, and the lonely discipline of a man who had mistaken isolation for duty. Then he closed it down again. Clara nodded once. There it is. She turned to the guards and held out her hands. I will walk. No chains. No touching. And somebody better bring decent coffee if this interrogation takes more than 20 minutes. The younger guard blinked. Yes, ma'am. Marlowe looked satisfied until Obsidian followed Clara into the hall. Everett's voice stopped them all. Obsidian. The wolf paused. He looked back at his king, not angry, not wild, just disappointed in a way that made the room feel smaller. Then he turned away and stayed beside Clara. By nightfall, half the pack had heard the impossible news. The Alpha King's own wolf had left him. Clara sat alone in a holding room that smelled like bleach and old paperwork, Obsidian lying against the door outside, refusing to move for anyone. She should have been terrified. Instead, she reached into her coat pocket and found a pine cone she had not put there. One point of it had been carved with a tiny mark, the old ranger station symbol. Clara stared at it, then slowly understood. The first gift had never been courtship. It had been a map. Clara broke out of holding with a pine cone, a paper clip, and the kind of calm that made Obsidian look proud enough to charge tuition. Technically, she did not break out. The door was already unlocked because the younger guard had left to find coffee and forgotten that low-ranked Omegas could have problem-solving skills. Obsidian led her through the service hallway, past the old supply room, and out into the cold morning behind the pack hall. 20 minutes later, they stood at the abandoned ranger station north of town, where the first pinecone crown had pointed all along. Beneath a loose floorboard, Clara found a waterproof ledger, 3 council seals, and a strip of black wool tucked beside a note in Everett's father's handwriting. If my son finds this, trust the wolf before the council. By noon, the Luna ceremony had started without her. The main hall had been transformed with white flowers, silver banners, and enough polished glass to make everyone's ambition visible. Allied alphas filled the front rows. Noble Omegas sat in pale dresses with careful smiles. Lady Vivian Hale stood near the dais, looking like a wedding invitation with a pulse. Everett stood above them all, crownless, silent, and terrifyingly still. Marlowe addressed the room. For stability, The crown must choose a Luna beyond scandal. Clara walked in through the front doors before he could say Vivian's name. Mud on her boots, wind in her hair, evidence in her hands. Every head turned. Someone whispered. She escaped. Clara lifted the ledger. Walked out. Different thing. Obsidian entered beside her, huge and black, and utterly unconcerned with ceremony. The room parted for him because survival remained a popular value. Marlowe's face tightened. This woman is under detention. This woman found what you buried. Clara placed the ledger, the signet, the silver snare report, and the wool strip on the center table. Her voice stayed steady, though the mate bond trembled under her ribs like a struck match. The signet was hidden after the former king died. The trap was baited with Everett's scent. The cloak thread came from royal storage, signed out under a false guard number tied to your office. Marlowe laughed once. A clerk with forest trinkets is not a court of law. Everett stepped down from the dais. The hall went silent before his shoes touched the floor. He did not look at Marlowe first. He looked at Clara. Not secretly, not softly from the shadows. In front of every pack, every elder, every camera in the room. I believe her. Clara's breath caught despite herself. Marlowe snapped. Your Majesty, the bond is clouding your judgment. Everett turned then, and the room remembered exactly why he was king. No, the bond is the only thing in this room that has not lied to me. Obsidian walked to Clara's side and lowered his head, placing himself between her and the council table like a living oath. Everett stopped beside her. Close, but not claiming. Protecting, but not hiding. Clara Whitaker is not my weakness, he said. She is the truth my wolf was brave enough to choose before I was. Clara looked up at him, anger still there, hurt still there, but no longer alone. Then she opened the ledger to the final page and turned it toward the hall. Marlowe's own signature stared back at the pack. Marlowe's signature did not shout. It did not need to. It sat on the final page in dark blue ink, neat and arrogant, beside payments to false guards, sealed orders for silver traps, and the names of border families who had been threatened into silence after Everett's father died. For a moment, the whole hall went so quiet Clara could hear the heating system click on overhead. Then Grant Maddox stepped forward and took the ledger from her hands with the careful respect people usually save for holy things or loaded weapons. Council security, he said, voice rough. Detain Elder Marlowe pending full pack review. Marlowe looked at Everett, expecting rage. Maybe he had prepared for rage. Men like him always did. Rage could be called unstable. Rage could be used. But Everett gave him something colder and cleaner. Judgment. You betrayed your king, Everett said. Worse, you taught this pack to confuse silence with loyalty. Marlowe's title was stripped before sundown. His records were opened to every pack he had harmed. The border families got their land claims restored. The guards who had followed false orders faced review, not cruelty. Everett called it justice without performance. Clara called it the first royal decision she had seen that did not smell like fear. 2 days later, she stood on her porch at sunrise, wrapped in an old flannel jacket, watching fog lift off the pine line. Obsidian sat beside the steps with a small brass key in his mouth. Clara stared at him. No, the wolf blinked. She took the key and saw the blackthorn crest carved into the bough. Behind the trees, Everett stepped into view, hands in his coat pockets, looking less like an untouchable king and more like a man learning how to knock. I did not send him, he said. Clara raised one eyebrow. You are still trying that. His mouth almost smiled. Less confidently. She turned the key in her palm. What is it for? A new office in the pack hall. Independent authority. Full access to forest records, council archives, and border complaints. If you want it. Clara looked at the key, then at him. Not a throne decoration? No, Everett's voice softened. A voice. That mattered. More than flowers. More than royal promises. More than a bond neither of them had asked for, but both had chosen to stop running from. Clara stepped down from the porch. Obsidian leaned against her knee like he had personally invented reconciliation. I am still angry, she said. You should be. I will not be hidden. You will not be. And if your council decides I am too much trouble? Everett looked toward the waking town. The pack he had inherited, the power he finally understood was not the same as trust. Then they will learn their king has developed better taste in trouble. Clara laughed then, small but real. The mate bond warmed, not as a cage, not as a command, but as a path two people could choose one honest step at a time. In the end, the wolf had not brought gifts because Clara needed saving. He brought them because the kingdom did. And because sometimes loyalty arrives on four paws, carrying pine cones, until a king remembers that love without courage is only another secret.